When the plopping style topwater bait first hit the bass fishing market, it quickly became one of the best bass fishing lures that you could own. Not only did this bait catch a lot of fish and also seemed to make those really big fish react to it, but it was winning tournaments from coast to coast. Now, since the heyday of this bait, and really just in the last couple of years, you've heard a lot of people say that this plopping style topwater bait is now dead. And really, that couldn't be further from the truth. Not only is this one of the best baits to cover a lot of water with, but it can still catch those really big quality fish. And today in this video, I'm going to bring on one of the hottest anglers in pro fishing right now, and one that has recently used the plopping style topwater bait to get him a second place finish and catch a ton of big bass. I know that I'm going to learn some things, and I really think that you are going to learn some things as well. So stay tuned. It's gonna be a good one. All right, welcome back to the I shouldn't say back. I'm not gonna say back.
This is the first
it's the first one.
Yeah.
All right, so welcome to the first Bass Juice podcast here with me, Tyler Berger, and my best friend and tournament partner, CJ Schaefer. How's it going, CJ?
Good, man.
Good.
Little humid out, but a little humid in here.
Little humid.
Yeah, we might have to get a fan going.
Okay, I can do that. But today I'm extremely excited because we've got not only one of really the hottest anglers right now that is fishing on a professional tour, but he's also a good buddy and a fellow Ohioan, Hunter Shryock. And we're going to talk today a lot about the plopper and the Chapo style baits. We just saw Hunter do extremely well in a tournament on this bait. And so I just really want to pick his brains because this is a bait that a lot of people think is almost dead. But really, it's not. And I think we're going to learn a lot more about it today. So Hunter, welcome. Nice to have you on the show, man.
Yeah, thanks for having me on, guys. I appreciate it. I know this is the first episode, so super honored to be the first guest, so that's really cool. And I know you do so many other learning videos and stuff like that, so I'm just glad to be a part of it.
Absolutely. Well, we appreciate that. And really, we're going to go right ahead and get on into it. And Hunter, one of the biggest questions that I want to know from you is what was kind of your first real experience with that bait, that plopping style bait, that Chapo?
So when it first came out, that was kind of like, I want to go take it back even further. Before I even knew it came out, James Watson won a open event on Table Rock, and I fished that event. It was in the fall. It was super tough. And what was I doing? I was going down the bank with a buzz bait and a frog, and it was literally wolf packs of fish, gin clear water. You could see them occasionally, but you had to basically get your bait up there to them before they knew you were there. And after the tournament, obviously we all found out that James Watson won it on that plopper. And I didn't even know the bait existed at the time, nor did most of the field, I don't think. You know what I mean? Like, He was doing the same thing as everybody else, but he was getting those bites. He was generating bites that we couldn't generate on a buzz bait and a frog and stuff. So that was actually my first experience of seeing what could have happened with that bait, because that was a prime example of when a plopper or a Chapo really stands out, is under those conditions. And so, but for me personally, like, I always think of a Chapo as like a big fish bait, not all the time. Like in the fall, you can use the 90 style and stuff like that. But I really tend places like Texas, Florida, places that have bigger fish in it. I feel like it can generate those bigger bites that other topwaters may not produce, and you can cover a ton of water with it. So places that you're throwing a buzz bait, you throw a Chapo instead, and you're probably going to get the biggest fish out of that group, or that one lone individual fish to kind of notice it and go after it. We all know it makes that unique sound. It's something that they haven't heard, and even to this day, it still catches them and catches big ones. So
that is true. I actually remember you were the first one that told me about a plopper, and I remember you saying something, and I was like, what do you mean? What's a plopper? And you were like, it's a mix between a buzzbait and a spook. I'm like, what?
Yeah, and I think my first experience with it was hearing someone throw it about 2 coves over. I thought, what in the heck is that?
Yeah.
True.
That,
Yeah.
But yeah, it's wild, absolutely wild. When it first, you're looking at it like, what do you do with it?
mm-hmm.
You just
Yeah.
cast it and reel it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It is. It's a really fun bait. Really aggressive bites. I feel like it was really cool to see you at Murray. Really just kind of doing something that just looked extremely fun. I mean, obviously you had kind of a 1-2 punch there, but those Chapo bites, man, those were I watching them on your channel and even on Bassmaster. It was really cool to see that.
Yeah, it's a bite like you guys get it. You don't see it in any other topwater really. It's almost like smacking a paddle off the surface of the water when they try to eat it. So it's pretty crazy. But the whole thing with Lake Murray is you can sit there. Like I found those fish the last day of practice, and it was about 10 o'clock, and I rolled around those banks, and it was every rock bank that I hit, I was, getting a big bite. And it was about 10 o'clock. So I'm like, well, I'll start here in the morning since, the tournament starts the next day. I'm like, I'll start here in the morning and probably be really good because of that herring spawn and everything. And I rolled back through there day one of the tournament, started on it for 30 minutes. I threw that Chapo around, never had a bite. Had no idea, like, how can I get a bite or two per stretch and now there not be a fish around? There was like no life. And so I went sight fishing, which was my primary deal. So I went sight fishing for a couple hours. And I'm like, you know what? I'm going to go back and check that place because I only had like 10 or 12 pounds at the time sight fishing. And I'm like, I'm going to go back and try to see if those fish aren't there at 9:30. I roll back and it was literally like clockwork. I think I had like 22.5 pounds in an hour. So for whatever reason, it's bright, sunny skies, slick, calm, not a boat around. Like I'm the only one doing it. And it was every stretch. And literally I just could visually see the next place I was going to fish. And I would go over to it. And if it looked right, boom, I'd get a bite. And the whole key was getting that Chapo as close to the bank as you could possibly get it. And basically what I figured out was I think those fish were out on those shad spawn deal, whether it's blueback herring or regular shad. They would be out there swimming around. And as the sun got up, they would just push tighter to the bank and get in those shade lines. And so it really condensed everything down. And so then you take a Chapo that looks like a fleeing bait fish or something that's, whatever the heck it looks like. I have no idea. All I know is it gets, those big fish to react to it. And so I would run it down the sides of docks, any little shade line. And it seemed like the closer it was, the more high percentage it was to get that bite. And so I literally did that the entire first day and lost a couple good ones, but overall it was like I didn't know the potential that bite was. And then throughout that tournament, it kind of evolved into the dock deal as the Chapo bite. It seemed like with the weather coming through, that Chapo bite dwindled, which for me personally, I don't know about you guys, but if you're in like bad weather and stuff, that's like the perfect time to throw a Chapo style bait. Like that's when I want to throw is when a storm's coming, there's a little bit of wind or something, cloud cover. That's when I feel like I can generate the most bites. But there, for whatever reason, it was the opposite. They wouldn't even touch it.
Wow.
So it's kind of weird circumstances.
That is nuts.
Yeah.
I think sometimes those herring lakes like that, like in a way, it's almost like they set up like a smallmouth fishery where it's like, and I don't know if this is going to make sense, but sometimes up north, when you're fishing, like those cloudy, nasty days, like it doesn't seem like you can always get topwater bites. It seems like those are the days you gotta drop on them or be on the bottom. Where it's like in the sunny days with that clear water, just like the herring deal, it's almost like the same with the smallmouth. That's when I'm catching them on top.
It's like a flip flop of everything you read, but just the more you experience it, the more you know or can anticipate. Okay, this might happen.
Yeah.
So at Murray, what size and color Chapo were you using? And just in general, you know, what maybe 2 colors, what sizes? What are you thinking, Hunter?
Really simple. I was throwing bone, just that typical white color of the Chopo 105, which is kind of like their normal medium size run-of-the-mill bait. So you got like the 90, the 105, and I think it's the 120. And the 120 is a great big one. That's more for what I would consider like Texas, Florida, stuff like that with, 7+ pounders. But at the same time, I feel like I could have got bites on it as well. And that's one thing I wish I would have experimented a little bit more with throughout the event, was trying maybe more translucent colors, because they got an awesome line of translucent colors as well. And it's like I went down a mile stretch with a bone Chopo for 4 days. Like they probably got used to it. You know what I mean? But I kept a buzzbait honest. I think overall it was more or less the mood of the fish that changed throughout the event. Like just like you were saying, those bright sunny skies, like that was the day that I caught them on topwater the best. Like every single fish that I weighed in was on the Chopo. And then as the event went on, it all transitioned to the wacky worm general around docks. And that I think primarily was, like you said, the weather and stuff like that. Like my worst day was the day that I felt like I was going to catch like 27 pounds. And that was like the storm rolled through, I think, on day 3. So yeah, anyhow, it's one of those deals. I think the 105 is pretty much, you're good everywhere around the country with that. If you're, running into the fall or your place has a lot of smaller fish, definitely throw that 90. It's got a whole different like acoustic sound to it that's going to, really get those smaller fish. You're not going to leave any fish behind, basically.
Yeah.
Yeah. So do you primarily throw bone, or do you do like a bone and black, or a bone bluegill
black?
That's it.
Yeah, I pretty much do bone and black are basically the only two. Now, like I said, they got some really cool colors and stuff like that, but most of the time when it's like practicing for a tournament, I'm going to be throwing bone or I'm going to be throwing black. Like,
okay,
it's just
and
what
then,
it is.
Like conditionally, which do you pick up first? Bright sun, flat calm, you go with the bone.
Yeah, I would say for me personally, I just had so much success with bone that I probably 90% of the time am picking up white. You know what I mean? Like that's just what I'm comfortable with doing. And then I pick, if I'm throwing something else, I feel like I could have been going past fish. And it's, vice versa. There's guys that throw a black buzzbait all the time, where I'm more prone to throw a white buzzbait. But yeah, it just depends. Like if I was fishing on the Sabine River, I was going to be throwing a black Chopo, like a Chopo 90, just because the conditions type of place like that. But being that it was a shad spawn type deal, I wanted to stick to white. But that's, like I said, 90% of the time, that's what I'm running with.
Yeah.
And I run the stock hooks on it too.
That's actually a big thing that I was going to ask you, because they're the Fusion 19s on that one, correct?
Yeah. And I'm just a big fan of round bends anymore. Like just your normal round bend hooks that they have in the Fusion 19s.
Yep.
The triple grip style hooks, the EWG style treble hooks and stuff like that. I don't know why, but like the hookup, if you get them hooked, I feel like you'll get them. But it's getting them hooked is, sometimes a problem. And you're throwing a topwater, you're not going to be 100%. Like as much as you want to be, but for how big those fish were and how I was catching them, where I was catching them at, I feel like I felt like I did as good of a job as I possibly could. And, the only other thing maybe I could have done differently was do the split rings with the braid instead of running the straight split rings. Gotcha. But you're running such heavy tackle, I'm running 50-pound X5 braid, Justin Lucas topwater rod, which is like a 7.4 topwater rod. More parabolic than what most people use, but like that's pretty heavy tackle. And I didn't want to risk, boat flipping a 4-pounder and having, braided split rings on there. Maybe a jerk bait or a crankbait or a spy bait, but maybe not so much that big top water.
Yeah.
Do you have a lot of experience with the bladed or the braid split rings? Have you
I've
like
done
do
it,
you use
yeah.
those a lot or?
I'll do it with spy baits, and
Yeah.
I've done it with jerk baits, and I've played around with it with crank baits. It kind of freaks me out if it's hitting the bottom and stuff, just because the potential of that. But I have seen it make a big difference, you know, with smallmouth, you know, especially like they're notorious for getting treble hooks. They could have all hooks, and by the time they get to the boat, they got the last one in their face, you know. So I once you get them hooked with it, yeah, it's a no-brainer. They don't have any leverage with it. So I didn't start doing that until like 2 years ago. But I've, you know, got a lot of confidence in it for sure. Takes
Yeah.
a little bit of time.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
But that is it, especially like for a spy bait that's so small and so heavy at the same time. Like you really do need that extra movement there so that you don't throw them constantly. But I'm glad you said that about the rod, because I think the rod is a big component that this is something that I have said even on the channel before is like, I think when people really originally started throwing like the Whopper plopper, it was like all flipping sticks, like 7 foot 6 inch. I mean, it is a big, heavy bait, but at the same time, it's a treble hooked bait. You know, it's like a top water. And for me, I'm kind of the same way where like I actually use my chatterbait rod. I put braid on my chatterbait rod because it's actually a half glass rod, and so it has more of that parabolic bend. And I have had a lot of good success with that. So I'm interested. You said 7'4", but you said that rod was a little bit more parabolic, right?
Yeah, it's really parabolic. I mean, it's a one that he designed for like a walking bait, like a cane walker and stuff like that. So, you know, it's probably a little bit softer, you know, to be throwing like that Chapo, but still for me, just like you said with trebles, like I need you got straight braid, like you're going to get hook penetration. It's that initial, once you get them hooked and they start digging and thrashing, you literally will pull the hooks out of their, you know, face or whatever. You need to keep them pegged up. So, and I would run my drag a little bit loose. I know some guys, they crank it down where there's, you know, it's just straight braid. But at the same time, like I hardly do that with my flipping sticks, yet alone with a treble hook, you know, with a number 2 treble. So
yeah. This video is brought to you by the Deep Dive app. This is an app that you can download on your phone that helps you define bass on your local bodies of water a lot quicker. Once you download this app, you can actually select the lake that you are fishing, and then you can input data like water temperature, water clarity, whether you are fishing around vegetation, or if you are fishing in a windy or protected area. Once you input all this information, the app will actually spit out lures, techniques, and areas that you can go on your local body of water to catch bass. This app is backed by hundreds of different tournament results from across the nation and can be extremely accurate. So if you guys would like to help support the Bass Fishing HQ channel and allow me to bring more videos like this to you, hit that link down below and download the Deep Dive app today. Now, actually, a couple of years ago, I was fishing, I want to say this may have been after you qualified. It was a Lake Norman Open in May. So I'm not sure if you were fishing it then or not. But you did not? Okay. So I actually got on a plopper bite there with spots, and it was extremely fun, especially because they were pulling current at some point during the day. And when they pulled current, like, dude, it was awesome with that plopper. But one thing that I found with the plopper at the time is that I actually had to like pop it. If I was reeling it straight in at a steady pace, nothing, I would not get bit. And if every now and then I just kind of sped the reel handle up or popped the rod, just spit it just a little bit, bam, they would come out of nowhere and hit that thing. So that was kind of a big thing that I wanted to ask you. Like, I think a lot of people just go out and throw the thing, but do you have any special ways or any special like technique that you do with a plopper?
Yeah, so I mean, the biggest thing for me is just kind of figuring out what they want, you know. So while you're trying to get that first bite, like what you did, you kind of had to experiment, or maybe you just half hitched your reel because you were looking over or something and then got a bite and you went, aha, you know what I mean? So maybe it's one of those things that you burn it for a little bit, Maybe you know, slow wind it for a little bit. You're just trying to get a clue. And then once you get that clue, you know, do you get another bite doing it? So, I mean, that's with any top water bait, really. But for me personally, my favorite retriever that I feel like works the best is just slow. If you can just keep that thing at a nice, steady, slow pace, because, I mean, you can burn it and the thing will still run true, but it's running a rooster tail like 7 inches long, you know what I mean? So,
It's trimmed all the way up.
Yeah, it's trimmed all the way up, just gassing it. But you can, just slow and steady for me has produced the most bites, you know, throughout anywhere I've ever been. So that's pretty.
We got a couple of guys in the Tuesday nighters running them rooster tails like that.
Oh yeah. On the Choppo,
you start getting in a hurry.
Yeah. on the Choppo, have you experimented with like a stop and go retrieve? Because that's something, you know, you can kind of compare it to a buzzbait, but you can't stop and go at buzzbait.
Right. Yeah. What I noticed, I mean, put it this way, I haven't done that a whole bunch. I noticed that you can obviously get that around certain cover and stuff, but I feel like almost like they get too good of a look at it in certain places, like they're not going to bite it. Like you need it to be creating that commotion for them to chase it almost. But the good thing that I like, or one of the main things I like about the Choppo, is when it hits the water, the initial startup time that it takes to get that tail is almost immediate, which it made a huge difference for me at Murray, because I was casting in 6 inches of water and I'm trying to make a long cast, and usually it was under some type of branch or a tree or something that created that shade. And so you needed to hit the water and initially start that tail up because you're coming straight off the bank. And so that's a big deal to get those, because you're landing it almost on their head. You don't want them to sit there and like spook off. It's instant, boom, that thing's tractoring away, and they just, out of instinct eat it. So that's probably, even up under docks, I was making casts up under docks, and I didn't want that thing to splash and just sit there. I needed it to make that splash and immediately be moving. So they didn't have time to think about it. They had to eat it.
That's
interesting.
That is interesting.
Yeah.
I was actually going to ask you. The Whopper plopper was one of the first that kind of came out. Now there's several. I think Guggen makes one. Obviously Berkeley makes the Choppo. But I was going to ask you. I mean, I know you're a Berkeley guy, but still, it's those little subtleties, like you just said, that it being a difference. With I remember, I still, like, every now and then I'll pick up a plopper, and what you just said happens on the opposite side. I'll throw it out, and it takes a second for the tail to get going.
I think that's our first drop of juice of the day.
That is drop of juice.
Yeah, I mean, obviously it's it's created off of the plopper, and they took a lot of, everything that the plopper is, but they took little things to make it better. And to me, like, that's the biggest thing, is that initial startup time, especially when you're throwing it around cover. Like, you have to have that thing start. It's like a buzzbait, you need that buzzbait to hit by that tree and initially start chirping. So, it's definitely worked well.
That's interesting. I wonder if they developed the bait specifically, did a pro help design it and say, hey, this tail needs to go as soon as it touches the water.
Yeah,
you don't think about those real little subtle things.
Lucas had a big hand in making those top waters, and I know that was one of the things that I've talked to him about when it came out, and that, like, he was selling me on was the startup time of it. And even in the 90, because the 90 is so small, and it kind of like almost it hits the water, it doesn't have a lot to float, so it kind of sinks for a second, but it does really well with that initial startup time as well.
That's interesting. It makes perfect sense, though. Another thing with that bait, I know that when I fish the Choppo, I've never done anything special to it, modification-wise. I know that with the Whopper plopper, you see the guys that'll run the tape around the back end. You know what I'm talking about, with the little tubing that sticks
like
the tail
aquarium
straight out?
tube.
Yep.
Yep.
So do you do any modifications with the Choppo besides, obviously we talked about maybe the split rings, but besides that, any modifications?
Straight out the pack. straight out the pack.
Dude.
I mean, have you some spare hooks ready?
Yeah.
You definitely want to keep, a set of spare. I mean, I was changing hooks out quite a bit just because I didn't want to take that chance.
Sure.
The fish that I was catching, heck, half the time it wasn't even so much when I would catch the fish, it was trying to get using pliers to get it out of its face, and then you end up, nicking the barb of one, or whatever. But yeah, I basically run those things stock. Never had, and yeah, going back to the split rings, that would probably be my biggest thing. I've never ran like a feathered treble on it, but it's one of those baits. It's like when they're on it, they're on it. It's almost like throwing a frog. The days that you can go out there and throw a frog, and you throw out enough froggy looking stuff, you get a bite pretty quick. And that's the same way with a choppo. Like, that's probably my biggest advice to people watching this. Like, you start to get those conditions to throw a choppo, and you start throwing it, and you throw it for a dang while, and you don't get a bite, it might not be the day for it. You know what I mean? But you get a day that is right. Most normal places, you get some type of systems, prefrontal system rolling through, you're going to get some bites on it. And, basically let the bait tell you it's going to work that day or not, because it is one of those finicky deals. Like, when they're on it, and then like Murray, I pushed that bait throughout the entire event, and I finally had to like start putting it down because it just wasn't happening. And that was, 20, almost 23 pounds on day one to almost can't even get a bite on it day 4. And even fish new water, it didn't matter. Like, they just got off of it under those conditions. So let the bait tell you if it's working or not. And it's not hard to throw. I mean, throw it out there, get it close to something, and go down the bank. And I'm talking the backs of pockets, the sides of pockets, out on the main deal. Don't make it overcomplicated. Cover water. That's what that bait is so good at doing, is you can get a bite from the bank all the way out to your boat. So, and you cover a lot of stuff, whether you don't know that's there, a rock, a boulder, a laydown that's under the water. Regardless, you're calling those fish up. It's a heck of a lot easier than throwing some type of spook or something, and walking it back to the boat. You could have made 3 casts with the choppo compared to that one walking bait. So
yeah. So at Murray, you said that the fish just got off of it. Did you just weren't getting any bites, or were they missing it, or what? Walk us through. And how did you determine? Okay, that's it. Pick up the general.
Yeah, and obviously having as good of a day as what I did in practice, seeing how they did it, and then the first day of the tournament, and then it seemed like the second day we still had some conditions. I think we had more wind, and it seemed like the windier it got, it almost ruined it. And I still don't understand why, because you would think that would almost help it. But for whatever reason, and the water's so clear there, so I could fish down a stretch of riprap, and I could literally look down and see fish. And you're looking at 3 to 5 pounders all the time. And so you just threw up past an awesome looking point, made 2 or 3 casts, and you roll up there and 3 or 4 swim off. And you do that a couple times throughout the day, you're like, okay, well, obviously something's not clicking, because the day before I caught one of those. You know what I mean? And I don't think it's so much a pressure thing as it is they just, that day they're not dealing with it, And so it was interesting to see it, and it was interesting to see the windows, the time frame that they would get on it and get off of it. Day one, it was almost like clockwork. I had about a 2 to 2.5 hour window that they absolutely annihilated it. And then the rest of the day, I had them short strike it, miss it, eat it, and come off, stuff like that. And it's, it's the same fish, same big fish. They just, those bite windows were a big deal.
That's so interesting. I love when you get really in tune with a bait, especially in a tournament. But just when you're in tune with the bait, when you're seeing those little things like that, where it's like those little, like you said, there's a lot of guys who are going to throw a choppo or plopper all day long, and they think that they're on it, and they don't realize there's an hour window where they're actually on it. Yeah. And it's so cool when you kind of dial that in, like how much how much more effective, because that ultimately, like, you realize, hey, they aren't committing to this, or the window's gone. Let's skip these docks around, skip with a little wacky one.
That's right.
Well, instinctually, I mean, that's what separates fishermen. That's why hunters on the elites. That's why I'm fishing the Tuesday nighter, getting one bite on the plopper last week.
Just
Did
getting
you catch one on
lucky.
the plopper?
No.
Oh man, that is.
But
really
no,
cool.
that was something that, and that whole deal evolved throughout the tournament, just like you're saying, like to figure that stuff out as the event went on, because I don't know if I would have ran with it as well had I started to see that at the beginning of the week. Like, you want to be finding something as the tournament's going on. 4 days is too long to try to run something that you found on Monday. Now maybe Monday might help you, but like, yeah, it was one of those deals, like, and it all goes back to that decision of me going, do I leave these bed fish that I'm watching these guys, pick off like Easter eggs? I knew a 4-pounder's here, I know a 4-pounder's there, and I'm watching, and for whatever reason, I wanted to go back and check that, where normally I would have stayed with those bed fish and probably had a 32nd place finish or a 20th place finish sight fishing the whole time. But I could have went over there and not caught anything either. So
yeah. So how many going into a tournament? How many different game plans do you typically try to put together? Plan A, B, C.
Yeah, I mean, obviously we try to go into the tournament knowing, what to expect with this time of the year. This is how it's going to set up. But for me, it's like, I know what I'm good at. I need to go find the things. Okay, how is this going to set up for Hunter? And whether that is going to win the event or not, I'm not going to win the event doing something that I'm not comfortable with doing. So to me, I'm literally just trying to maximize my time in practice of, how does Hunter like to get bit? Let's go find as many areas and places, or what's going on that I can generate bites doing. Yeah,
I think that that's something you just constantly hear. Guys who do so well, where when the elites started, what was that, 2006, you heard about, everyone was talking about versatility, because it was going to be a tournament series from the spring all the way through the fall at the time, which now it still spans a long time, and it's all about versatility. But I actually wrote down in one of my questions is like, I almost think nowadays that the almost stubborn angler can do better than the versatile one. And I'd love to get your input on that. And really what I mean by that is just kind of what you were saying. How's this going to set up for Hunter? Like, if you go to the St. Lawrence River, and we'll take an example a couple of years ago. I'm not sure if this is what happened, because I also know that you're really good at drop shot, but everyone knows you're going to throw a drop shot in a Ned rig when you go there. But something that's set up for Hunter is flipping mats and frogging. And I remember you actually did really well in a tournament at the St. Lawrence several years ago, fishing for largemouth and doing that. Yeah. So, and I think that sometimes it takes a full practice to do something you really love, to find those few areas that are going to help you to do well. And if you get kind of caught in this in-between zone of trying to do too much or trying to do what you're supposed to, it can actually like make you not do well. And so I'd really love your input on that, Hunter.
No, you just nailed it on the head completely. Like, exactly what you said. You got a limited practice, you got X amount of time, and you start spreading yourself thin of, well, this is what they're supposed to be doing. This is what I want to do. And next thing you know, you kind of didn't really figure anything out on each front, because like you said, it may take me all 3 days to find, one or two areas that I can catch my fish doing the things that I like. And if you like cranking, if you like, throwing a chatterbait, and you got to go find those places. It's not like you're just, dropping the hat. You have that in your back pocket everywhere, because typically you don't. But eventually you're going to run into something, and more times than not, you're probably going to have it to yourself, or only a couple other people. So for me, that's a lesson that I have to learn. If not every event, every year, obviously, I learn that same lesson, and I get tired of getting my butt kicked over and over again just by stuff that, I beat myself. You know what I mean? That's ultimately, we're fishing against ourselves. We're fishing against the fish. If you do your job, you're going to have a good tournament. If you don't do your job, well, yeah, you're going to get beat. And, a prime example would be like Pickwick last year. I tried to be Randy Haynes Jr. and get out there on the ledges and graph, and well, everybody does, right? And everybody's pretty much good at it. And so you put 100 elite guys out on the same pond, and we're all doing the same thing. And what did I do the last day of practice? I went and fished shallow for about 3/4 of the day. And how did I catch them in the tournament? Fishing shallow. And so if I would have just given myself like 2 days of practice up shallow, I would have kept a check. But instead, here I am, just missed the cut. I just missed the classic last year by 3 AOI points. So it's like, ultimately, like that's the row of ducks that you get going down. Like I hate to learn that lesson over and over again. So I've just become to be really stubborn, just like you said. Like, you just have to stick to with what you're doing, and just know that if that's a 70th place finish, so be it. But I'm not going to let someone else beat me doing what I'm good at doing.
Yeah.
And so that's the biggest thing for me. And the other side of it too, I'm sorry, I want to throw this in there.
Go ahead.
So to be versatile, that's a really vague thing in fishing. Like, how versatile can you be? Well, we look at someone like Jacob Wheeler and Connell and everyone else. Those guys, that's not your average angler, and they're super versatile, but that's about as versatile as you're going to get. And so if you're trying to mimic that, that's a really, really hard thing to follow. He can do it all. They can do it all. So to be able to do everything that good is really, really, really tough to do, because ultimately stuff changes so much throughout a week and for a tournament, that if you're not really good at doing whatever's going on, you're not going to make those adjustments throughout the event. Even though you may have had a great practice, 2 days later stuff changed and you don't know how to adjust to it. So that's the being versatile part. Like, how good are you at being versatile?
Yeah. And you can, like, I think the best guys, they fish their strengths, but they have versatility within their strengths of, I'm a shallow angler, but I can do XYZ shallow, make it work, and might be able to apply that to something I might not be the most comfortable with. But if I'm really good at flipping a jig, and then I can take a jig out, offshore on one spot, catch a kicker fish, but be able to, settle in up shallow, do my thing. I think that's, like you said, Hunter, it's so hard. It's impossible to be completely versatile. Mm-hmm. And then once you get in that mindset of, this is how I'm going to fish, it's going to bite you in your butt. But, the tournaments that do end up setting up for you are going to be the best tournaments of your life.
True.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
I think that I think if you're not a tournament angler, it's really hard to understand that at times. But it's like, I remember when practicing for the Opens, because I feel like I can do a lot of different things, but it was always the tournaments where I would just stick with one thing that I'm like, I feel like I'm going to do this and do it well, then I did well. But it was like, if I was jumping shallow, deep, flipping, pitching, doing this deep, it's just like, people don't understand getting spread too thin in a practice period. I guess even in the Opens where it's longer, still there's only a couple of days there that really matter. And so it's just something that's so hard for some guys to wrap their mind around if they're not tournament fishing constantly.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's different for tournament fishing, because like we're all really versatile. Most tournament anglers are nowadays like really versatile, but are you elite versatile? Because that's what you're going to have to go against. Are you, actually elite at doing that technique or, able to adjust to those things, and that's the part that usually gets everyone and gets me all the time. Like, I'm not an offshore fisherman. I can go out there and catch them on a Tuesday evening, and it's fun, but it's not a tournament. You know what I mean? So it's a different ball game when you throw yourself out there in a tournament and knowing, this and that and how to go about it, how to strategically plan things. But I know how to do the shallow stuff, and I know how to strategically plan for that. So that's what I'm going to stick to. So,
yeah. Well, and I think that, you see it with both sides of the spectrum what I'm referring to is shallow guys and deep guys. But it's like guys who stay deep, and do that, they might do awesome in the exact same event that the guy who stays shallow, stayed shallow and found his fish.
And it's the guy that's stuck in between the
tweener.
Yeah, the tweener, where he doesn't focus on one thing or the other. He's scattered, running around.
Yeah.
Ends up dead last.
Unless you're Jacob Wheeler.
Or
maybe Brian Thrift.
They can do that. Yeah.
Yeah. Which is interesting because, that was another question I really wanted to ask you, because you were from Ohio, and now you've moved down to the good old state of Tennessee. Hopefully you're still a Buckeye, though.
Oh, yeah, 100%.
There we go.
Actually, I can't wait for football season. I just told my wife that the other day. I can't wait for football season.
I'm actually really excited, too, especially, well, we won't get into Ohio State too much. I'll probably just delete this. But I'm interested to see McCord, our new Ohio State QB, how he's going to do. Or if Brian wins over.
I have no idea about any of it, so I couldn't even hold the conversation, to be honest. I've been living under a rock the past couple months.
But anyways, you have moved down to Tennessee, and that was one thing. Like you fish often with Jacob Wheeler. I think a lot of us know that he is an elite angler, probably the best in the world right now. And like you said, he can do everything well. I mean, he's won tournaments with the spinning rod. He's won tournaments with the bait cast rod, shallow, deep, everything in between. So with you fishing with him, which I know you have, have you picked up anything from him that you're like, maybe that's why he is the way that he is, or whatever?
Oh, 100%. Yeah, 100%. I mean, it's kind of eye-opening to be around him at times, because it's just like you feel like, I'm just going to go stand at the back of the boat now. Take me wherever. Let's go to another spot, Dad. Let's go. Come on, take me there. Like that's about how it's like. He makes you feel about this tall when it comes to fishing stuff. To an extent, you know what I'm saying? Like,
sure, it's
just a notch above. Like I know how I practice. I know how I go about things, and everything that he does is like that next step. And to your point, like, he probably is the greatest angler in the world right now, 100%. And just to see how he goes about things and, work ethic. I mean, I think he lives, eats, sleeps, and breathes, bass fishing all the time.
Yeah, and he's got gills.
Whether it he's got gills, 100%.
100%.
He'll call me at dang 10 o'clock at night. Hey, what do you think about this?
Oh my gosh.
I don't know. I just got done eating dinner or whatever. Like, I don't know about that. He's like, I want to try it out. Let's go tomorrow. But yeah, it is eye opening. And to see, like, for me, racing motocross and being around like some of the best motocross racers, but at a distance, right? But now I'm in fishing, and to be literally neighbors with the best professional bass angler right now, that's kind of like, well, it is achievable, if that makes sense. Like, it's not some fairy tale thing that couldn't happen. Like, no, here's the steps in the process right here. Like, he's done this, and like you're talking with him all the time, you're good friends with him, and it's almost just like a realization, like, yeah, you can make this happen type of deal, which is just a big confidence booster for me. But it's he's on a whole nother level, that's for sure. He puts his time in.
Yeah.
Have you ever seen him backlash?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
All right.
I mean, no, 100%. He's human. There's no doubt about it. It's just he's in another gear all the time.
Oh, you can just tell watching him, his mechanics are just, I mean,
he
a whole
hustles.
nother spectrum of fishing. Yeah.
Yeah, and that kind of taught me a lot just for the past couple of years of being down here. You know, being able to fish on a fishery that I see scenarios, like real scenarios play out. So moving from Ohio, Tyler, you know all about it. Like, it's hard to gauge at some of the places that we get to go and fish, like the smaller lakes. It's hard to gauge, well, how would this play out on a real body of water? You know what I mean? Which now I kind of know that it still is kind of the same deal, but it took me to be down here to see that I go out on Chickamauga and I can, you know, go to the same places. I can, you know, there's a population of fish that live there that I can go get, you know, 10 or 15 bites in a day. And I see how they change, and I can see what they want and what they don't want. And it's the same scenario over and over and over. And so it's like, well, more than likely, when I go throughout the country, this is going to work, this isn't going to work. So for me, that's been a huge deal. And just being around Jacob, seeing how he prepares for tournaments and events, and that's kind of changed the way that I set up from tournaments and stuff like that. Like, it's not just show up or the week before you're looking at something, you know what I mean? It's months in advance that you're looking at one single event, and you're hyper focused on that, you know, certain deal and what possibilities there couldn't be and everything else. So, yeah, it's a whole deal.
So I was gonna ask you on that, and you kind of just said, but like, if you could elaborate on just one little nugget like that, like you said, months in advance for one event. Like, I know fishing the opens, you know, it's like, you know, a lot of guys that are fishing that, you know, they might have a full-time job or something like that. So you are like the week before, like you're thinking about it.
Yeah.
But you don't really start digging into maybe internet and like Google Maps and all that stuff until maybe the week before, a couple days before, maybe even during practice. So is that something that you've seen him just completely that just changed what you have done now?
I mean, he definitely puts his time in with that stuff. I'm sure it's not like I've sat there with him and gone through, you know, hey, how do you do this or that? Just for me, myself, like kind of like what you just said, showing up, you start to think about it the week before, you know, where for me, just the progression that I've made with the filming stuff and then trying to just this is solely on fishing. It's allowed me to have more time to like go pre-fish, you know, and stuff like that, where maybe I wouldn't have been able to go pre-fish in years past. And I have always tried to pre-fish when I can. But like just recently I went to St. Clair, I went up to St. Lawrence, stuff like that. And that was like a 2,500 mile round trip, but being able to utilize those trips in advance for, you know, a month or two down the road and knowing now how to pre-fish better, so to speak, you know what I mean? Where before it was like, I would go to the fishery, it's like, okay, I'm here. I see it. I've been at the ramp. Okay. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, you do.
Check mark.
Sometimes it can hurt you more than it does you good, type of thing. Where I feel like I've gotten to the point now where I can maximize my time at a fishery, looking at stuff that actually save me time in practice come time for the tournament, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So just trying to stay ahead of certain things and not thinking about it the last second or the last minute before the event starts.
So in practice, you're obviously running around a lot looking, but what makes you stop and fish? Do you put yourself in, say, a major creek? Okay, now we've got to dissect this creek. What makes you go to this bank over that bank? Is it more structure related, more cover related, or a combination of both?
Yeah, I mean, it's just like, it looks fishy, right?
Okay.
And, you know, I can't tell you how many times that I've fished at a place that I've went back to in a month and that same stretch has been good, you know? Like, we think that these fish move all the time and they do all this stuff. And, you know, there's a reason why that creek's better than this creek. You know what I mean? So I intentionally try to fish, but knowing in my head that that's not going to be the same deal, but maybe that general part of the lake or part of the river could, come into play. And so I kind of want to have some type of see how the bank's set up or stuff like that. Like Lake Murray, like as big as a place that is, I spent like 5 days there and I fished. I drove around a lot, but I fished a lot too. And so I kind of seen where there were places and where I actually caught the fish at. I put my boat in like for 3 days. And so in my mind, I knew where that stretch of riprap was. I knew where those docks were. And ultimately I ended up going over there in practice, and that ended up saving my whole event. So little things like that. That's not always going to play out. But it's just something to kind of give you some confidence in. And obviously, like, it's not going to be the same thing. And I think before, like, I maybe get stuck in that. I go to a waypoint expecting that to be a bite. But now we just have I have a generalization, like, this area could be good.
That is good. That is something that, I've done a lot of study stuff on the channel before, where it's actually they're the biggest videos that I do, because I have to spend so much time reading this scientific jargon that like I'll spend a whole day reading just this stuff to try to go through it. But anyways, one of the ones that I did recently with Toledo Bend, like one of the biggest things that you saw there is like these fish just don't move that much. Like you're saying, there's a reason why that creek tends to be the place where tournaments are won, because a big population of bass lives there, a big population of bass spawns there, they live in that general area for whatever reason. Maybe it's better structure, cover, oxygen, bait, whatever it may be.
That creek can sustain that population.
Yeah. So it is, like you said, we're used to seeing, or reading the book where it says, the fish are going to go from the back of the creek to the main lake, point by the creek channel, swing, blah, blah, blah. But some fish definitely do that, but a big portion of them are just going to kind of have a home area where they kind of stay.
Yeah. And just as quick as those fish moved out, there may have been other fish to slide in, or, what I'm saying? Like, there's just life around the region. And then you can put yourself in places, it's like you can feel it. This is dead. I'm not getting any bites. It doesn't look right. I don't want to waste my time here in practice. So a scouting trip, stuff like that, knowing, having a plan, I want to do this, this, and this, and check it out. And then that kind of gives you a little more direction come time in the tournament. Now, again, that can all come back to burn you, at the end of the day, being too locked in or too preconceived notion on something. But I feel like I used to just go to places so often. It's like the night before, I'm like, I think I'm just going to go to this boat ramp. Yeah, I'll go over here. You know what I mean? And not really have like a little bit of a strategy to it, where it's a little more structure to it now.
Yeah. Well, that's good. That's good to have some structure. I feel like I have definitely had those tournaments too, where I'm just like, I got to imagine that you guys do it too, especially when you have back-to-backs. Like you, even recently, like if you go 4 days in an event, make a top 10, and then you're going right next to the next one. Like you've seen, it's crazy how a lot of anglers who do that will get a couple of top 10s in a row.
Yeah.
And it's just like, it's because it's just all natural. Maybe they put that plan in place before the tournament where they knew what they were going to do, but it's just interesting how everyone's a little bit different.
Yeah. It could be, just that flow. They've got that confidence coming off a top 10. Their confidence is in, say a Chapo. Mm-hmm. And then they go to practice the next day. What are they going to pick up the Chapo? Okay, they're getting bites. Let's keep this rolling and put another back-to-back together. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Sometimes not caring too makes a big difference.
Yeah.
Like, actually, what I'm saying, respectfully, you care but don't care. Like you're just more fluid with it. And I've had, I'm sure you have too, where it's just like whatever, and have a really good tournament because you've only got one place or one area, and that's it. And you make it work.
I saw firsthand Hunter not care, and I think he got a second place down there in Tennessee when you were qualifying for the elites. You had practice on, I forget where the last tournament was, but you came up to Dandridge, and I don't even know if you practiced, right? You were there for maybe a day or two. Yeah,
I had a day and a half of practice.
I was there for 5 days, wrecking my brains. Like literally headaches every single day. It was hot, and Hunter shows up. I remember seeing, this is another thing. I was running down the lake, and I look over because Hunter, you can see his green truck from miles away, and he's like on a random rock bank. There was I don't know what you did, but there was no boat ramp there. There was a rock bank, and it was your truck and your truck alone. I'm like, dude just drove through a forest and put in on a rock point somewhere and just parked it. I'm like, that's awesome. I still don't know to this day what you were doing. But
there was an Airbnb right there, and so they said that you could just back down into the water. You had to like basically back the truck into the water to get it off the trailer, but it was good.
Oh my gosh,
that's awesome.
But yeah, you got a second. Yeah, what was it? A second place you got, didn't you?
Yeah.
That's insane.
Odd ended up winning that one.
Oh, that's right. Odd's a good dude, so it's cool. But that was awesome. But it is interesting how everyone has just a different viewpoint when it comes to tournaments. Now, with all this tournament talk being had, we've recently seen a lot of almost Japanese techniques start dominating in a lot of different ways. And so one of the questions that we wanted to ask you is, we know that you are you're a shallow water, you're a power fisherman often, but I know you can use a spinning rod as well. Are there any Japanese techniques that you have seen that you're like, man, I really want to get good at this, or I really want to try this, or whatever it may be?
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to be picking Jacob's brain about how he won Guntersville. And I don't even know exactly how. I didn't really watch that one a whole lot. But basically it's kind of not, it wasn't even hover strolling, was it?
It was the jig head minnow type deal.
That's right.
So
and he was
it's like hover strolling, but it's a little bit different at the same time with the jig head.
Yeah. I think he was more like fan casting.
Yeah. Well, he
wasn't specifically looking at them.
No, he was targeting. So
they were all on.
They were on ledges, but they were suspended, and he was seeing them and casting to them and bringing that deal right over. And that's the same type of area you'd throw a crankbait, deep diving crankbait, big worm, like they do everywhere else. But he's I don't even know, a jig head minnow. The mopping, I think, is what Gussie calls it.
Yeah,
mopping,
tickling,
mopping.
just
yeah. There's a lot of different names for it, but that is one that has really dominated. Actually, Eufaula Open just got won by Joey Nania doing the same thing.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, so that's one. And then the hover strolling, I feel like is a definite deal. And I've been playing around with it lately, but I mean, it still goes back to one of those things like, how much can I use it in a tournament? Now it becomes different when you're fishing for smallmouth and spotted bass, because those techniques really do hit the forefront. You have to know how to use them. Like what Fujita is doing, like what he did at Lake Murray, good contender to win the event. And you look at how he was catching those fish, pretty crazy, and he's only going to get better with those finishes that he's had that weren't so good, that didn't set up for his style. He's going to fill that gap in. So it's crazy to see how well he's doing with those styles. And definitely something that, like I said, I'm going to keep up with. How much I use it in the tournament's really just going to depend on the species of fish. If it's largemouth, I cannot see myself doing that stuff.
Yeah. Well, when you can catch them on a frog or a plopper.
Yeah, that's right. It just depends. It depends on the scenario, right?
Yeah.
Like if that's the only way you can get a bite, then yes. But more than likely, there's other ways to catch them. But yeah, those are the few that I know of. I'm not, the hover strolling deal, that's been out for years. I'm a little late to that.
Yeah. How about the free rig?
Free rig,
where they've got like a drop shot weight in front, and it kind of pendulums down.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I've heard a lot of people are kind of keeping that. They've been using a lot. They keep it
Yeah.
under the covers a little, more than
Yeah.
fuzzy
Yeah, I've
dice.
seen that as well. Haven't really caught a lot of fish on any of them, so I can't really
Yeah.
say.
The interesting thing about that free rig, and it's ignorance. Like, I just need to go out and really like test it out, I guess. But to me, it's like, is it really going to outbeat the standard Texas rig that's not pegged? Because all it really is a, like, that's what I want to know. Like, but it's so hard to test that. You can't test it out really to be able to see unless.
Yeah. They've got new techniques. It's crazy.
With my forward-facing sonar and tried to see how much different it would be, and kind of like to your point, Tyler, I don't know how much different it is from the Texas rig being unpegged.
Yeah.
The weight falling away from it.
Yeah.
So it's kind of, I don't know. I think it's a pretty good grass deal. If finesse fishing grass and stuff like that, submerged, soft grass type of deal. But yeah, I don't know if it depends on getting that right combination of the bait with the right weight to keep it, to get that fall and separation, or I don't know.
Yeah. I know something that I see a trend that I'm interested to see it continue is like a lot of, you'll see a lot of the Japanese anglers will use a heavy plastic style bait with no weight, but they'll fish it in deeper water or even shallow water. But a lot of times they'll fish it offshore, but it's like they let the thing sink for a minute, which is a long time if you really think about it. It gets to the bottom, and then they're using this thing that looks supernatural on the bottom. But one cast takes like 6 minutes or 7 minutes. Like, it's. Have you seen that, Hunter?
Fished and swam over 30 yards.
Yes. Oh man.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah,
There's finesse and slowing down, but I think that might be taking it to the extreme.
That is.
Yeah.
That is.
Yeah. I wanted to ask you, Hunter. Oh, go ahead.
No, I was just saying they're comfortable with doing that type of things where they know if they get 8 bites that day doing what they're doing, they're cool with doing it. They could care less. They're going to sit there and throw dice out there and roll the dice the whole day.
Yeah, it's wild. I think Kenna was doing it at Oneida last year. He was same thing, like 8 fish a day, 10-minute cast, but he caught them. It looked like fun. He said he was mashing the barb down on his hook because the fish were eating it so good. They were gut hooked. So he had to mash the barb down just so keep the fish going.
He wouldn't know they would be on the bait until they done swallowed it, and he'd reel up and there's the fish on.
Exactly.
It's wild. I had a question for you, Hunter, and this when Ty said we were having you on, I'm like, okay, this is the question I've always wondered. I've always wanted to ask, like every elite guy, because I struggle with it, and I don't know if it's an Ohio thing where the fishing's just tough. But if you're in an area and you fish through it with a spinnerbait, crankbait, drop shot, whatever, and by the time you're almost out of that area, you figure out a technique, figure out, something different. Do you go back through that area with the new technique, or do you just write it off? Well, I didn't get bit until 3/4 of the way through. Let's go find something else.
Right.
What do you do in that situation?
Depending on the situation, like you don't have anywhere else to go, like you don't think in your head that there's a better population of fish. I would say like you couldn't go somewhere else. Yeah, you're going to go back through it doing something different. But typically, like I'm going to take what I figured out, and I'm going to keep covering more water, or new water that looks the part. It's hard for me to go back through something. But at the same time, there's times where, you can fish right past a lot of fish. We all do it. And one thing that I've become more comfortable with is like fishing around guys or fishing behind guys. Before, that would freak me out, like to have someone going down the bank. And like in Ohio, there's not too many stretches that you can get on that someone isn't pulling up to or pulling away from.
Yeah.
But like I have the confidence now to know, like, well, they probably didn't hit everything the way I'm going to fish it. You know what I'm saying? So that maybe is a little bit of a twist of what you asked, but yeah, I don't know where I was going with that, but having confidence to fish behind someone. Don't be afraid to.
Yeah, that is something that's really big, though. Because like you said, I mean, Ohio doesn't have a huge fish population, so when you do see that, it's pretty disheartening. But even when you're an elite guy, it's another level because you're going behind an elite guy. It's not, right. So that is a good thought, and I think it's a good thing that can give us confidence of just saying, like, hey, really just don't worry about it. Just fish the way that you fish, and you're probably going to catch fish that they didn't.
Yeah, you just have to know that you just got to outfish them and do, something a little bit different, or what that you're doing, the odds of them. You might cover a bank, but think of how many places or how many things that you did, targets that you'd never hit. Like you can't hit them all. You can't do it all. You know what I'm saying? So yeah, you hit the high percentage stuff, but a lot of times you find that they're not always on the best looking thing. They might just be under the little pocket of shade or something stupid. So like fishing everything that's in front of you on that section that you feel like there's some fish on. If there's traffic on it, you're still going to catch some fish.
Yeah, unless you pull it behind Tommy Biffle and are flipping bushes.
Yeah,
that's when you just turn the boat around and.
I wouldn't want to pull.
Yeah, it starts to
Tommy
get
Biffle.
When it's something specific like that, it does that tends to suck. If it's like this is the only way you can go down it, that is. But you can always come back later though too. Like just because you've seen one boat going down it an hour later, or 30 minutes, like they didn't catch all those fish. They're still there, and it's all about timing. You hear that all the time. Like timing is so important, and you just need to be around 5 of the dumb bass that are willing to bite throughout the day.
Yep.
Yeah, I think Ty, you kicked my butt. I think a couple years ago, I was flipping a laydowns, and you were flipping behind the laydowns.
Oh yeah,
behind me, and I'm like, what the heck? But it was just something so stupid. I wasn't getting over the logs, but it was that one thing, and you get behind a guy that's flipping, maybe he's not hitting the backside of the logs.
Yep.
So it's so interesting.
That was something I remember learning from my co-angler days on the opens. Is I watched my boater everywhere he casted when I would do that, because if you're going down a bank and someone's flipping, then it's like, okay, this guy's hitting everything. But you would always see. I remember being in areas where I fished on Wheeler behind guys, and I fished on Santee, where it's like they were fishing the bank, and I literally would watch every cast that they made, because I'm like, even if I'm a foot or two to the side, I have a better shot than where they just were.
Right.
And it was like, I remember that day too, when you were doing that, you were just kind of hitting what you would expect to catch them on. And so I just,
stuff.
the obvious stuff. So I was just flipping way into the crap, and I was catching them.
Yeah. And then I started doing that. And I
still
didn't catch them.
No, you got some. You got some. Well, Hunter, we're kind of wrapping things up here, but I had a couple of interesting statistics for you. So one thing that I thought was really interesting looking at a couple of your stats here is you already hit $500,000 in bass earnings. Did you know that?
That took a while to get there, though.
There's
a couple guys that hit that mark a lot faster.
Yeah, but still, like that is something. Like that's something to be said. And not only that, so you fished the opens for I believe 5 years. You fished a couple divisions some of the years, but you made somewhere around $70,000 in the opens themselves, which is actually saying something. I think the majority of that it was in maybe 1 year, or not majority, but almost half was in one great year, which was awesome.
Right.
Probably really helped set you up for the elites. But still, you've you've made $440,000 in basically 5.5 years on the elites. This is your 6th year, correct?
Yes. Yep.
Okay. Which, if you break that down, you're making about 80 grand a year tournament fishing, which actually, considering it's a $10,000 check, that means you're making 7, 8, 9 cuts every single year. Like, that's really impressive. And and I feel like you've only gotten better. Like, where you're coming off 2 top 6s, is that right?
Yeah, so
top
2nd at Murray, and then a 6th at Sabine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's dude, I remember when we were fishing the opens together and just both having the same dream. And, you know, like, it's cool to see a guy that, you know, not only, like, progress and make the elites, but also, like, do his style, do his thing, and progress in the elites. Like, I'm sure there's a lot of tournaments you want to have back, but you can just tell the maturity and how you've now approached it. Even the conversation we've had, how you were like, I'm doing my thing, and that is what works for you now every single time. And it's just super cool to see, especially being that you're in Tennessee now, but you're an Ohio guy. Like, I consider you to be like, you're Ohio. You know, like, I think Dave Mercer still says you're from Newcomerstown, Ohio.
I think he does. Yeah. I don't care. Yeah, that's completely fine, because I am. You know what I mean? I've only been here for a couple of years, but no, I really appreciate it. I mean, I've been really fortunate, you know, to get into the elites, for one, to have the things happen that's happened, and then, you know, ultimately just it's learning. Every event is just another, you know, learning experience. You know that. Like, every time you have a tournament, like, that's just another, you know, chapter that's logged into your memory of an experience. And that's really all fishing is. Tournament fishing, fishing in general is, you know, those experiences, and you know, how quick are you to adapt and change to those conditions when you see them again. So it's just a big game.
Now, CJ, I'm gonna ramble off a couple of names, actually several names to you, and I just want you to see if there's a correlation in all these anglers. We all play fantasy. Well, we play fantasy fishing, so I feel like we know anglers fairly well. Okay, but listen to these guys: Kyle Welcher, Brandon Cobb, John Cox, Tyler Rivette, Drew Cook, Will Davis. That's the rookie from Alabama, I believe.
That's right. Yep.
He won. Patrick Walters, Drew Benton. Okay, those are the names right there.
Okay.
Any correlation that you can think of when I say those names?
Those are all top 10 AOI?
Well, yes, they are top 10 AOI. Anything else, though, that like...
Yeah, you're missing one.
Well, I'm not there. I'm not there yet. Just any correlation in those guys that you can see as who they are as an angler.
They're all Southern guys.
A lot of Southern, almost all Southern guys. Not only that, like shallow water guys.
Oh, yeah.
A lot of shallow water guys.
Yep.
Okay, now that's 8 names. Those are the top 8 in AOI points. Now, the 9th name is Mr. Hunter Shryock, who we have right here. Now, Hunter, although he is one of those shallow guys, let me read off a couple of other statistics for you really quick, which is going to take me a minute to pull it up.
You did your homework, man.
Hey, you know, I'm just trying to make sure that I'm prepared here. Now look at this. I'm gonna list off some lakes to you now.
Oh gosh.
Okay, so we got Sabine River, Lake Murray, St. Lawrence River, the Tennessee River, Lake St. Clair again, Lake Tenkiller, Cayuga Lake, St. Lawrence, Mississippi River, Chickamauga, Harris Chain, Lake Erie. Now, did you notice anything in those particular ones that I just think?
Dude, that was a lot.
That was a lot.
That was a
okay,
lot.
Here's what I'm getting at.
Yeah,
I'm making a long story, but those are all of Hunter's top 20s. Okay, those are your top 20 finishes with bass. And if you notice, about half of them are like smallmouth fisheries. You know, like St. Lawrence on there multiple times, St. Clair, Lake Erie. So, Hunter, you, in my mind, like, you have a legit shot here, bro, to win the Angler of the Year, because a lot of the guys ahead of you like they're all good. We all know how good they are, but you have you have it in the back pocket. Like you've done well on smallmouth fisheries, and you guys are going to some smallmouth town. Now the guy behind you happens to be Jace Zakurat. How you say that?
Shakurik?
Yeah,
Shakurik.
Shakurik.
Yeah, 100%.
So we all
It's
know
just-
that he's smallmouth guy, but dude, like Kyle Welcher's only 80 points ahead of you, and you have 3 tournaments left. So I mean, if you top
77
20,
points.
okay, see he's
Nobody's counting.
he knows what's up. So I mean, you know, you get a couple of top 20s. I mean, Kyle Welcher could make checks. He could get 45th, 47th, 48th, and you could catch
That's
him
true.
with
Yeah.
top 20. So I'm just saying, I'm feeling that we could be talking to the future angler of the year right now.
No pressure.
No pressure, of
No
course.
No,
pressure.
no,
I think-
there isn't. I mean, honestly, I looked at that right after the Sabine River, and so much shuffled at the Sabine and how everything changed there. And it's like, I went from 66th after, I think I went from like 62nd after the first 2 events, and now I'm in 9th. And you looked at the past couple of years, it's always been the northern swing has really saved my year. And there, you know, for me, like that's always like my strong suit, except for Champlain. Champlain's been a thorn in my side, which Champlain's a thorn in anyone's side. Almost any tournament angler, it could be, you know what I mean? It could be really good or really bad if you didn't catch that 1 3.5 pounder or that 1 3 3/4 and you caught a 3 1/4. So we're going to St. Clair and Champlain, that either one is, I mean, look at what just happened at St. Clair for the MLF guys. Like there's a big mix up, you know, you could be, you know, 100 yards away from the biggest group of fish, but you don't catch them and you're going to fall. Like this point separation is a lot. So for me personally though, like I have to have the 3 best tournaments to close out the year, like string together my best 3 tournaments that I've ever had to win AOI that I feel. But ultimately, I just want to win an event. Like, so I'm going into the last 3 going, I need to win one because I was too dang close. I was too close at Sabine with whether it didn't look like it on paper. I was too dang close, you know, the second day. Anyhow, so I ultimately just want to win one. So I'm going to St. Clair. Like I want to win. Like I'm from Ohio. You know, we got the Erie's in play, St. Clair. Like I've been there too many times. So if everything else like if I go there and get a top 10, then I just set myself up for AOI. And if I don't, it doesn't matter. You know what I mean? But I ultimately want to get a blue trophy.
Yeah. A blue trophy and a 100K do help.
Yes.
Well, yeah.
Yeah.
They go a long
Oh,
way.
yeah.
Well, there it is. Finally, we were able to get a Bass Juice podcast filmed. This is something that has really been in the works for well over a year now, and I finally got the setup that I just feel like can bring the best quality when it comes to a fishing podcast. I know that I really enjoyed my time with Hunter and CJ, and I feel like I learned a lot, so I'm hoping that you guys learned a lot as well. Please, if you're still around, let me know down below in the comments if you like this style of video. We plan on bringing you one of these each and every single week, probably going to drop them on Mondays. So again, thanks for watching. Don't forget to comment down below. Also subscribe to Hunter's channel. I'm going to leave it linked down below, and don't forget to subscribe here as well. I will see you guys in the next video.